So I'm sitting here in my office and I'm working on my computer and I have my phone next to me. And as I'm kind of going through things, I see people once again complaining about social media and complaining about phones and complaining about technology as a whole. And a couple of thoughts went through my mind, and I thought for this week I would share them with you. Bottom line is this: anything can be bad, anything can be evil. Even good things can become bad things if we use them wrong. Even when we're talking something as simple as food, if you use food in the wrong way and you overeat, it becomes something that is not positive. It becomes something that is quite negative. Frankly, even things like family can become an idol to people if they put that even above God. Things like sports can become evil. Things like video games can become evil. Even things like water bottles, if you put your whole life stock into it, can become evil. I mean, anything can become evil. Not just phones, not just technology, not just social media. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not okay with the way that we become so distracted with social media and with our phones that we actually even forget about the world that's around us. That genuinely bothers me. Working with college students, some of them, the very first time they get here to Ozark, they don't even really know how to carry on a conversation looking at you in the eye. I mean, sometimes there was one conversation I had a couple years ago, and it was interesting because I was like, that was weird. I'm like, what was that? Why was that so strange? And then I realized later, oh my gosh, he was talking to me in text. Like his questions were about 140 characters long, and whenever I got over my 140 character limit and my response, he checked out. Don't get me wrong, there's significant things that we need to deal with. But what's interesting is it isn't just technology that has led to people struggling interacting with each other face to face. I mean, some of us carry so much shame that it doesn't matter if you've even owned a smartphone, you'll have a hard time looking people in the eye. No, I think sometimes we're blaming old problems on new ways of exposing the problem. And technology is just one of them. So for example, my biggest concern about technology and about phones is the way in which, once again, like in the Garden of Eden, it is challenging us to be like God. I get friends and even students at times that they'll email me or they'll text me and sometimes I just don't get back to them for a couple of days. It's not because I don't love them. It's not because I don't care. No, it's because we're not meant to be accessible to every person at every moment. We're just not meant to be that. Humans were made to be able to deal with only so much. Only God himself is able to handle every person in the world's access to him at all moments. But what we have now in our hands is this expectation that we can be omnipresent, available to all people at all times, in all locations, for an immediate response. And if it isn't immediate, people get upset. If it isn't immediate, people go accuse you of all kinds of crazy things. And here's one thing that's interesting to me. I'm going like, listen, it was only 100 years ago, whenever if you wanted to talk to someone, you'd have to, write them a letter. I say 100 years ago, but it wasn't even that long. We have to write them a letter, and you'd have to wait a couple of days for it to get there, and then they would get it and read it a couple of days, and then they would write their letter and then send it to you, and it would take a couple of days. And we considered that fine. There was nothing wrong with that. The expediency with which we must be accessible to all people, I think, is causing an anxiety in us that we need to be wary of. I mean, all throughout the Bible, whenever anyone tried to grab a hold of an attribute of God that belonged to God alone, it always ended bad for us. My biggest concern with technology is the way in which, number one, sure, it becomes an idol, but the way in which, number two, it challenges us once again to grasp the fruit. The fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Where we are once again attempting to become like God. But guess what? This isn't just a technological problem. Well, this is a problem that finds its way into all kinds of areas in our lives. Many of us are tempted and we struggle when we are not, all powerful. That's why we run from vulnerability so much. Many of us attempt to grasp at the fruit that would make us not just like God, but even carry the burdens that God himself is only equipped to carry. So my challenge for you is not to get rid of technology. My challenge for you is to think creatively of how we can leverage it, number one, for the kingdom. But number two, to think creatively about what it exposes in us. We do not have to be accessible to all people at all times. It doesn't mean we don't love them. Actually, what it means is this. We go away in order to become whole so that whenever we return back to them, we can love them best. My students are starting to get into this flow here at Ozark because when they say, hey, Shane, can I have a meeting with you? My answer is always, absolutely, email me. And why do I say that? Well, because I want to be able to have my schedule right in front of me so that I'm able to make sure that, number one, I can fit as many people in as I possibly can, but number two, so that I can also make sure that I'm doing the disciplines, doing the right things I need to do in order to fill myself up so that whenever I'm actually engaging people, I have something to offer them, namely myself. No, boundaries are not bad. They are not evil. As a matter of fact, boundaries are simply us saying this. We are not God. We can't handle everything. We can't do everything. We can't be accessible to all people at all times in all locations. That is not a burden that a human was ever meant to handle and that a human can handle. No. I was meant to handle exactly what it is that the Lord has given me, and that's the things right in front of me. Let's just be on the lookout to make sure that whatever it is we're engaging, it's not another attempt to grasp the fruit. Love you guys. Don't just read the word. Let's be the word.